Howdy! What's going on, everyone? Glad you are all gathered here for our expert mock draft at DraftDay. Really excited to see a lot of these names we got going on here tonight. A lot of cool folks, a lot of bright fantasy football minds, and I'm Crazy Gaby, of course. How rude of me to not formally introduce myself. Hanging out with my partner in crime here, Justin. You might know him as Big Italy 42. What's going on, man?
Hey, not much. I'm just excited to see what the experts like and get dived into this draft here.
Yep, same here. I'm really curious to see who goes first. A lot of folks are in the Jamal Charles camp. A lot of folks are in the LeSean McCoy camp. And still a lot of folks are in sort of that really hyper-contrarian camp, like somebody in a PPR format like Adrian Peterson still at number 1. Also liking guys like Matt Forte, who, as we know, is a PPR monster, one of the most consistent folks throughout the entire season. In fact, he sometimes felt like, outside of Jamal Charles, and at a much discounted price tag, the most consistent running back you could find.
Yeah, definitely. Matt Forte, also really durable, just a guy you can always rely on, gets a ton of catches. He's the focal point of that running game and definitely a huge part of the passing game as well.
Yep. Same thing here. I'm also interested to see with a couple of these strategies that have been running around. I feel like a few of these guys are very responsible for it as well. The late round QB strategy, the zero running back strategy, which isn't actually zero running backs. You know, that's foolishness. You have to have running backs, but it just it highlights the fact that running backs are the most volatile position. You can get them late. You can plug and play them, especially in a best ball format, which is what we have going on here, where the computer is going to take your best scoring players and fill in your optimal lineup each week. You just take a host of these cheap running backs, and you just hope that a couple of them hit. Just cash in a lottery ticket a couple times a week, and all of a sudden you've got yourself a really solid score. So I'm super interested to see where some of these guys go, and as they make some of the picks, we'll run down and highlight some of these guys and exactly who they are, which sites they're from, and maybe even a couple pieces of interesting information. Perhaps we can get Friddle over there to disclose whether or not he is wearing pants. He is known to be a non-pants wearer while drafting fantasy football teams. So that's always going to be interesting. All right. Got about a minute and 20 seconds left to go. Justin, are there any sleepers this season that you are super high on?
Some of my sleepers are some guys that are no longer sleepers because I've been reading up on Twitter from some of these guys and some others about what's going on. As a Bengals fan, I'm a big fan of Marvin Jones. I think he's a huge red zone target, and I've been noticing a lot more talk about him. So he was one of my favorites. Maybe not quite a sleeper, definitely not a sleeper anymore.
Yeah, I actually saw a lot of tweets from people about Marvin Jones. Absolutely loving his value, and you have to, when you got a golden arm like Andy Dalton delivering the goods, the billion-dollar arm, as I like to call it, how can he not have a good season, right? This guy has to be numero uno sleeper.
Yeah, Andy Dalton has tons of weapons, so from a fantasy perspective, he's definitely a solid choice in the mid-rounds there, but well, it remains to be seen if he can get it done in real life yet.
Yep, definitely. So, all right, we've got about 20 seconds before this thing kicks off. Definitely excited to see where the first pick is going to go. All right, 11-10. We are almost there. I'm looking at some of the comments here in chat. Love to banter back and forth here, so we'd love to have some of you guys talking. Friddle says, hope I'm not the only one with a couple beers in them drafting. Actually, wait, yes, I do. That is an advantage. So, all right.
Always an advantage.
See, first overall pick. Refresh the screen here, and we should be getting started. See, I'm working this draft from the 3 hole, says Spider 2 Banana. Only 9 seconds, Dave Loughran. Pick somebody. Don't go Teddy Bridgewater first. Nick Raducanu can tell you all about that. He's definitely gone him first. Oh, no, and Laffy D went with Peyton Manning first. I suppose that's not a terrible pick. Brandon Niles going LeSean McCoy. That answers the question whether or not Jamal Charles or LeSean McCoy is going to go first. Matt Forte ahead of Jamal Charles.
He's got to go fourth then, right? If he's going to be the third running back taken, that's kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, the absolute stone balls on this guy to take Matt Forte over Jamal Charles. And Nick, Fantasy Trade 911, picking up Jamal Charles with the 4th overall pick, something I bet he did not expect to see happen when he first woke up this morning. Inevitably thinking about this draft because I know that's what he does. He's got drafts on the mind all the time, especially before football season starts.
Yeah, I'm still curious to see how the platoon's going to go with LaShawn McCoy and Darren Sproles in Philadelphia. That's going to be one hell of a duo coming out of that backfield.
So he went Jamal Charles.
As expected.
Yep, let's see how Josh Shepardson does. Adrian Peterson, expected. Even though it is a PPR format, Adrian Peterson's still one of the strongest options available. And got a lot of running backs going here first. I will be super interested at the 10 spot, taking the wheel, as we like to call it, what Friddle does. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he might get cutesy and go tight end here with Jimmy Graham and Rob Gronkowski. I've seen him do things like this before. Since it is a best ball format, since there are flex spots, I could certainly see him doing something like that. Fantasy Nomad with the ballsy pick of Calvin Johnson. Love it. The next tier of running backs, not nearly as good as those first 4 that went off the board. At least right now, they're hard to distinguish between who deserves to be in the first round. You got guys like Giovanni Bernard, Monty Ball. A lot of people make different cases for these guys, but overall, I do think in a PPR best ball format, the Calvin Johnsons and Demaryius Thomases of the world, as Napsterman just went with Demaryius Thomas, are really safe plays. Something interesting, too, Napsterman actually texted me yesterday. It was either yesterday or today where he said that he was absolutely going to do awful. I guess because he hasn't done much fantasy football research. Nap, I'm sorry to let the cat out of the bag here for you, dude. Demaryius Thomas is not a bad pick, though. I like it. I think you're doing perfectly fine there. Jimmy Graham with Mike Gallagher. Interesting pick. I like it because, Jimmy Graham, I think, he finishes with close to first-round production all the time. And a lot of people keep saying that tight ends are going to trail off the top-tier ones like Graham and Gronk, and they continue to do their thing. If Jimmy Graham pays off, maybe perhaps with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder for not getting the contract he thinks he deserves, I could definitely see him doing some major damage this season, especially with no more Darren Sproles in the picture. Pierre Thomas is solid, but maybe not going to require as many touches as Sproles did in his heyday.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Jimmy Graham's will be playing with some little bit extra fire this year based on everything that went down in the offseason here. So Jimmy Graham definitely a guy with just immense upside.
Absolutely immense. Love it. All right, a couple of these other guys. That next tier of running backs started to go off the board with Roto Hobo and FF Riddle, DeMarco Murray, Eddie Lacy, Des Bryant, Julio Jones. 4 really solid back end of the first round, early second round guys. Julio Jones is a guy that I've seen a lot of divisive opinions on throughout the industry because he has sort of earned the moniker of boom bust guy who's injury prone. So certainly somebody that you're a little worried about over the course of a season. But, I believe in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, he played all 16 games.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he's the guy that stays healthy, I mean, he's easily a top 5 wide receiver. He's just torches defenses. So if he can stay on the field, then that's a great pick right there.
And let's see, Marshawn Lynch went off the board. I would be scared to take Marshawn Lynch, but I like the gamble there because, look, Lynch is a first-round pick if he is a known quantity. People know who he is. They know he's beast mode. They know he's completely bonkers. He's the workhorse of an offense that doesn't like to get too fancy in the passing game. The one thing about Lynch is how satisfied is he going to be, and is that going to spill over into the season? Football players tend to be extremely emotional, especially when it comes to contracts, longevity of their careers. A lot of times they can feel disrespected in a sense when they don't get treated well by the team they're with. And Marshawn Lynch has had, I don't want to say attitude problems. He's a grown man. I don't want to say attitude problems, but he has had some issues in the past when he was in Buffalo where people thought his career was over.
Character issues.
Character issues, yes. That's what ESPN likes to call it. So he has had some character issues in the past. All right, looking here a little bit further down, our Josh Shepardson, our very own, took A.J. Green. Very nice pick. You being the Cincinnati homer, love him. And Fantasy Trade 411, FT411, Nick Raducanu took Rob Gronkowski. So both premier tight ends already off the board. Kind of tells you what the value of guys like this are. How long do you think it'll be before we see another tight end get selected? That's going to kind of be what I'm interested in because is it going to be Jordan Cameron? Is it going to be, Julius Thomas? Who's going to be the next guy that gets taken off the board at that position?
I would say I would be taking Jordan Cameron. I would imagine it'd probably be a couple more rounds. I'm going to say 4th round.
Okay.
Before we see another one.
Okay. I'm going to say next round we see Julius Thomas. Opinion is really divided on him throughout the industry. A lot of people feel like he's a physical monster who would be just fine without Peyton Manning. Some people like to argue the Peyton Manning effect, that he's the only quarterback, maybe along with Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers, that can sustain 4 or 5 different options in an offense. Whatever case you want to make, the fact of the matter is he is back with Peyton Manning this year, who did show signs of decline at the end of last season. That's the one issue I have with Peyton Manning. Signs of decline at the end of last season. Lost even more of the zip that he had on the ball. You're always kind of wondering which hit is going to be the hit that really, maybe strikes a little bit of a nerve in his neck. He's had those issues previously, and that's really what affects the throwing ability too. So
yeah, true. I like Le'Veon Bell there, definitely. I heard that he dropped about 20 pounds.
Yep.
Try to add a little bit of speed and a little bit of muscle. So Le'Veon Bell, a guy that definitely scary coming out of that backfield.
Absolutely. Zach Stacy, somebody I absolutely love. He stole my heart last season. Zach Stacy did.
Zach Stacy was the go-to for DFS guys last year. He was cheap for the longest time.
If you were anything of an astute fantasy sports player, you had him off of waiver wires as soon as it was clear that he was going to be a complete monster. Before people started to worry up, welcome to his name. And I'm going to go ahead and go off on a limb and say the reason he wasn't well received to start wasn't just because he has 2 first names. Some people like to stay away from that. I've heard superstitions in the lore of fantasy football, but it was a boy and a girl first name.
Yeah,
very strange.
True.
You don't see that often. Zach Stacy.
And then right afterwards, another guy with 2 first names, Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, this is true. Although Alshon sounds more like a reverse namer. Jeffrey Alshon sounds a lot more appropriate than Alshon Jeffrey.
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of Alshon Jeffrey. He definitely made me quite a bit of money last year with his breakout.
Giovanni Bernard going there at the front of the 3rd round. Excellent pick, in my opinion. I'm actually higher, especially in a PPR format, on Giovanni Bernard than most. It doesn't look like Green Ellis is going to be getting any love this season in Cincinnati. Hill, you got to be excited about having Hill. He's basically the younger iteration of Green Ellis. And it doesn't worry me that the coaches are projecting Hill to get 10 to 15 touches this year. Because even if he gets that, Bernard's value isn't just in carrying the ball 10 to 15 times a game. He derives a lot of that in a Darren Sproles-like effect from the backfield.
Yeah.
And if you honestly believe the hype about Andy Dalton and Marvin Jones and A.J. Green, you have to love the fact that Bernard is going to go unchecked out in the flat often.
Yeah, I really think that Hugh Jackson is going to turn around that offense and really make A.J. Green, who was already the focal point of the offense, but he's going to mix Giovanni Bernard and even more, make him just a monster out of the backfield, and he's going to be getting the bulk of the carries along with Hill. And I really don't expect Green Ellis to be doing a whole lot because he was just simply not good last year.
Yep.
He has no speed, no breakaway speed, and that's hard to trust in a running back.
Absolutely. To round out the 3rd round, we had a lot of high upside players, maybe not necessarily as high of a floor as some of the other guys, which is to be expected in the 3rd round. This is where things start to get dicey, and a lot of these picks become subject to opinion. The first 2 rounds are generally set in stone. You don't know where guys are going to go exactly, but you pretty much know who's going to be in the first 2 rounds. This is where it starts to get interesting because it comes down to opinion and preference for a lot of these guys. Antonio Brown, I know a lot of people are high on him after last year, but a lot of people are also way down, saying there's no way he can sustain the touchdown production that he had last season. You would love nothing more than to see someone for the Pittsburgh Steelers fail, so I'd say you're probably pretty safely on the other side of that argument.
Yeah, I've been trying very hard as a DFS player to put my allegiances aside, and I've had no problem putting guys like Antonio Brown in my lineups because he is the guy that definitely showed a lot last year. Like you said, it remains to be seen if he can maintain that, but he looks like he's got some considerable upside. If he can maintain even a good percentage of that, he's in for a great year.
So right now we've got Fantasy Nomad with Reggie Bush and Napsterman with Arian Foster, 2 running backs that are extremely hot and cold as far as people are concerned. Some people won't touch these guys, even if they have them available in the 4th round. Other people think they're in for another huge season. The argument I've heard for Reggie Bush is he's not going to increase his role. It's Joique Bell that's going to be increasing a little bit, maybe even taking a little production from Reggie. And I have to admit, I'm actually huge on Joique Bell this year. I find myself routinely getting him extremely late in mock drafts, even in some MFL 10s, and I'm a huge proponent of him, especially in anything that resembles a best ball format, because I think he's got huge playability in that offense, especially now that they've picked up a legitimate wide receiver too. You know, instead of trying to home grow one for so long, you know, the Titus Youngs of the world and, you know, the Nate Burlesons on their last legs coming off of broken legs. No pun intended, I guess, on his last legs. But they've actually got an established guy now to run opposite of Calvin Johnson, and I think that should help the entire offense this season. Hopefully, if nothing else, also Matt Stafford getting down his happy feet. That was the big problem with him last year. The footwork was absolutely atrocious with Stafford. It led to a lot of poor throws. And listen, Calvin Johnson, when you throw the ball out to him, he can cover up a multitude of sins.
Yeah.
All these other wide receivers, the Brandon Pettigrews of the world, the Chris Durhams of the world, those guys aren't going to be covering it up. You better throw it in the window so they can snag it. And that's really what I'm going to be looking at this season. Is Matt Stafford really, to me, is the key cog in that Detroit offense. And I know that that's kind of a cop-out to say that about a quarterback, but especially when you consider he's the signal caller at what should be a prolific offense, a top 10, possibly even top 5 offense, considering the weapons they have. I think it's going to come down to how much he's worked in the offseason to correct some of those issues.
Yeah, and it makes sense because Reggie Bush is not the 30 rushes type of guy that you're going to have in your offense, like a Marshawn Lynch type of guy. So he needs to throw the ball. They're a run or a pass-first offense, certainly. So I think actually with more weapons on the outside, in my opinion, I think that Reggie Bush will probably increase in value because the field's going to be more wide open for him, whereas before they were pretty much defenses, you're going to go ahead and cover Calvin Johnson, and then you're going to cover Reggie Bush, and there's not really anyone else that can hurt you. But now with some extra weapons out there, you could definitely see Reggie Bush getting some more open field to work with.
Yeah, I think so as well. So, all right, we've got our. By the way, Julius Thomas in the 4th round. I called 3rd round, so I was definitely mistaken. Not just the 4th round, towards the back end of the 4th round as well. So almost fell into the 5th. You called Jordan Cameron. I have a sneaking suspicion he's going to go off the board here in the 5th round at some point, though. Yep. I do think he's the next best option on the board. And another thing that I want to mention from this 4th round here is Victor Cruz. Look, Eli Manning's not good, okay? He's just not. Anybody who says Eli Manning is good because he has 2 Super Bowl rings or anything of the sort is fooling themselves. That being said, Eli Manning is a serviceable NFL quarterback who had a very bad season last year. I don't expect him to be nearly that bad. They're going to get the running game situation figured out with Andre Williams. Some of these other options that they have in the running attack. They're going to get it figured out at some point. And Victor Cruz, to me, back in the slot is what's really going to boost his value. He's naturally a slot receiver. And what makes him so deadly is the fact that he's so effective down the field as a slot receiver. He keeps the safety on his toes constantly. And at any point in time, if he gets a mismatch across the middle with a linebacker that drops back, it's absolutely over. So I love Victor Cruz this year. I actually have him as a late 2nd round, early 3rd round pick. So I do believe Fantasy Nomad snagging him in the middle of the 4th. I believe it's an excellent value. Now, I know there's a lot of experts who would disagree with me. And like I said, these rounds, it really starts to come down to preference and which player you think is really going to break out this year. So C.J. Spiller, another interesting one. Mike Gallagher took him. We all know Spiller has tons of upside. And Fred Jackson's another one of those guys that we just keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for him to break down, and it just never seems to happen. The guy seems to be made out of, adamantium. He's got a Wolverine's exoskeleton or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to predict and say that this is the year. And look, we got a tight end off the board, Vernon Davis, before Jordan Cameron from Josh Shep. Ballsy move. It would be nice to see Colin Kaepernick start to air it out more this season. I heard some pundits on ESPN, and to put it nicely, some pundits on ESPN are not too privy to how offenses actually work. They don't play daily fantasy, so I feel like they may be a bit short-sighted in their analysis sometimes. And I saw a lot of folks talking about whether Vernon Davis has the requisite skill set to be a solid tight end in the NFL.
Of course.
Which was absolutely laughable to me.
Yeah, he absolutely does. I mean, he has. If you're talking pure skill set, he's top 5 among tight ends easily. He may even be 3rd behind Gronk and Jimmy Graham. I mean, he's definitely there. And the only thing taken away from Vernon Davis is, seems like San Francisco actually has a few other reliable options, whereas a few years ago it was Vernon Davis and everyone else. So less pressure on him at least now.
And I see one of our drafters, Sequine, said sigh. I'm wondering what that is. I hope I can get a little more indication from him in chat exactly what's going on there. once we get out of these first few rounds, we start getting into some of the deeper sleepers. I'm going to go over all these guys, the sites that they're from, exactly what they stand for, what they represent, and give you the goods on where you should be going for your fantasy football information this season. Shane Vereen coming off the board to Napster, man. Vereen is another hot and cold player. A lot of people love him. A lot of people won't touch him. Me, personally, I can't do it. Not New England running backs. That's just not my thing. I can't do it. But tons of upside there. Vereen has immense talent.
And it's obvious that Tom Brady loves him coming out of the backfield. He definitely trusts him to throw him the ball in any situation. I mean, you've seen him throw it into traffic with a couple guys right around Vereen because he's got great hands. He's elusive. But like you said, it's hard to know who's going to get touches and where. But one thing about Vereen that I liked last year was he does get a lot of targets in the red zone, even out of the backfield in the passing game. So I think he's got that going for him. But you never really know if he's going to get 5 or 10 rushes in a game. It's hard to say.
Yeah, and I guess I'm looking now back in the chat. Spider to Banana in the chat there. That's a C. Klein on the draft board here. He says, I got sniped from Michael Floyd. Good pick. I agree. Michael Floyd, I'm expecting a giant breakout for. I actually think that he should be drafted ahead of Larry Fitzgerald. That's just my opinion. One man's opinion here. I love Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's a solid pick as well. But I think the drafters got it right here by taking Michael Floyd ahead of Larry.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Roddy White's another guy that's interesting there because if for Atlanta's sake, hopefully their passing game gets back to where it was a couple of years ago, and that Julio Jones-Roddy White attack, if they're both healthy, then they're both going to be in line for just huge years.
And I see Napsterman saying, not a huge fan of Vereen, but it is a best ball league, and hopefully we can get a few monster weeks out of him. He's one Stephen Ridley fumble away from hell of work.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
agree. That's one of the interesting things about the best ball format. And for those of you who weren't aware, the week 1 matchups. I know you can only see the one week 1 matchup for Nick Foles there. That's the way the sizing of the screen worked out. But week 1 matchups don't matter here. We're basing this draft and predicating it upon the concept of best ball. And that means that your lineup is optimized each week for the best player. So if Calvin Johnson puts up 3 fantasy points and your 16th, 17th, and 18th round wide receivers all put up huge weeks, they're going to be in your lineup and not Calvin Johnson. So I love that strategy from Nap there. Take the high upside guy that might have 2 or 3 weeks where he's a top 5 scorer, and then he really pays off the price tag of a 5th round pick.
Yeah, that seems like the way to go in the best ball league because, like you said, it really doesn't matter name recognition or anything like that. I mean, you don't even have to worry about the matchups. It's just whoever gets it done is going to pay off for you big time.
The guys in chat here seeming like they really love the Friddle pick here. Bishop Sankey and Michael Crabtree on the wheel. I'm a big fan of Crabtree this year as well, and I love Bishop Sankey in the 5th round. I do think initially people were too high on him. Then the winds of change sort of swept the other direction. People began to become lower on him, and at that point, you really have to start to target guys. It's so true in DFS as well as season long. You really just have to read the ebbs and flows. And actually, from talking with Napsterman, this is something I know that he does a lot playing daily fantasy. He likes to consume all the information available at every site that offers daily fantasy analysis, and he will then use that as sort of a barometer to decide whether or not a player will be highly owned, whether or not a player will be low owned, and then he can make his decisions based upon that to try to win huge tournaments. Knapp, of course, with an impressive resume, including a pair of $50,000 wins and a $125,000 win. So definitely take his advice to heart, which is why I remember the conversations we've had in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a solid strategy. I was not aware of that, and I usually try to go a little bit in depth like that, but definitely that's the strategy to go with because you find those few guys that are 4 or 5% owned in the big tournament. Those are guys that are going to win you the big money.
So I'm taking a look here, and unfortunately, Riddle didn't go with his no RB strategy. You're letting me down, Matt. I was really hoping you were going to go 0 RB and teach these young whippersnappers a lesson. It didn't work out that way. Pretty much everybody decided to at least get a piece of the pie when it comes to elite running backs, which is fine. That's a good strategy. I'll be interested to see who starts picking up their 2nd and 3rd running backs. My apologies, their 3rd running back and more later in the draft. Looks like everybody has a 2nd running back at this point. So I like what Gallagher did. The upside of C.J. Spiller, the consistency of what should be a solid role of Toby Gerhart, and then just decided to take 3 extremely high upside options in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah.
So, very solid strategy. Mike Wallace, man, boom or bust. But when you look at the consistency of the lineup he's made so far, you've got guys in workhorse roles in McCoy, Monty Ball. Antonio Brown, is going to get those receptions from Ben Roethlisberger regardless of whether the touchdowns are there. Michael Floyd, obviously a breakout candidate. Julius Thomas, a top 5 wide receiver, unquestioned. I think it's a good pick to go with a Mike Wallace in the 6th round and see if you can tap into some of that upside. And I think we all are sort of holding our breath to see if Ryan Tannehill can take that next step and become the quarterback that a lot of people think he can be. Yeah. I hear a lot of pundits actually talking about Ryan Tannehill as though he's somebody who really has a chance to be an extremely solid late bloomer. So I think I like it. I like the upside pick there.
Yeah, Mike Wallace, the kind of guy, he can get you an 80-yard touchdown quick. So especially in a best ball format, he's the type of guy, he might only need to get you 1 or 2 catches to get you some huge numbers in this format. So you got to like that there. See Julian Edelman coming off next. Love Julian Edelman. He's now Tom Brady's safety blanket. So you've got to love Tom Brady's favorite target.
Yeah, Tom Brady's favorite target. Our very own Josh Shepardson at Beachhead50 there up on the board. I believe he's Josh Shet 50 on the draft board, Beachhead 50 in the draft. We need to make sure everybody has the same username in chat. We're going to have to I'm forcing all of you to change your Twitter handles to your draft day handles before the next one. You can change them right back. I promise. Scott, actually, Sports 25 to life in here. Scott, the man behind the curtain, man behind the magic at draft day, says Gallagher's team is sick. He's just a basketball homer, and basketball guys got to stick together. Fredo with the what about my team? So very nice. Sorry, I was choking on my own words there. I see some talk about Rashad Jennings. A lot of people increasingly high on him this season, so it's going to be interesting to see what he does with that feature back role all to himself finally. I know a lot of the pundits I've heard before just didn't think he was something very special, a physical specimen, but didn't have the requisite skill set to really become a next-level player. And then last year he sort of broke out, he sustained it, and he actually proved a lot of people wrong. Now, let's see if he turned that into a payday and kind of relaxes and takes the week off, or if he actually turns into a complete monster that a lot of people had him pegged as when he was coming out of college.
Yeah.
He's a very physically imposing man.
Definitely with a lot of upside there. You're not sure if you can rely on him yet, but once again on this format, I mean, the guys with the upside are who you want.
Yeah, it's Sports 25 to life says also nice to see Project Roto not reaching for Teddy Bridgewater in the first round. That's FT411, and in a previous mock draft that we had, he accidentally goof grabbed, as we like to call it in Magic the Gathering, and took the wrong guy. So would be very cool if he did a nod, an homage of sorts, and decided to take him again. T.Y. Hilton. Let's talk about him for a second. I don't think anybody has been more divisive than T.Y. Hilton so far this year. Some people hate him. Won't draft him if he's available in the 8th or 9th round. Some people think he is the solid guy in the Indianapolis Colts offense.
I love that guy. I love T.Y. Hilton. I think he's definitely a guy who he's going to just keep getting better and better. And Andrew Luck just loves targeting that guy. And I mean, I know he had at least 1 3-touchdown game last year. I want to say he had 2.
Yeah.
But I mean, he looks for him in the red zone. He's a deep threat. He's reliable. He's got good hands. He's one of my favorite receivers you can get late.
Yeah, I can't argue with that at all. Taking a look at the board, see if anything sticks out. I see my man Joique Bell went off the board. This is why I like Joique Bell. I feel like he has a chance to be Reggie Bush's equal this season, but you can get him about 3 to 4 rounds later than you get Bush. And anytime you have a situation like that, before the beans were spilled on Michael Floyd, he was going a little lower than the 4th, 5th round. Now he's going, usually before Larry Fitzgerald, which, like I noted earlier, I think is correct. But back when he was going lower than Fitzgerald, that was kind of the same concept. Why get Fitzgerald when you basically can get somebody in the same offense who has a good chance to finish equal or maybe even a little ahead in Michael Floyd?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And, yeah, it's hard to say with those two, but definitely like Michael Floyd I like in that scenario.
And then we've got the full basketball chatter going on right now. No wonder my Durant searches weren't turning up anything, says Friddle. Kevin Love falling so far is nuts. Yeah, it's crazy. A lot of people are worried about his new role with the Cavaliers. So a pair of very mercurial wide receivers coming off the board at the end of the 7th round, Emmanuel Sanders and Marcus Colston. Colston, of course, might be on the twilight of a stellar career, a career that, frankly, nobody thought he was going to have. He and Drew Brees have really just been dominant for the better part of a decade together. And Emmanuel Sanders, the up-and-comer, who, because of his size, extremely diminutive in stature, a lot of people are worried that there's no way he can come close to some of the numbers he was putting up last year. Got a little Sucked down a little too much Red's apple out there. My apologies. A lot of people worried that Emmanuel Sanders can't put up the same numbers that he did last season, and I actually just don't think that's the case. I look at the offense, and I look at what he has as a skill set, and I find Peyton's going to get the ball to him somehow.
Yeah,
it's just going to happen.
I mean, you got to figure any young, talented wide receiver, regardless of size, if Peyton Manning is getting it done on offense, he's going to find a way to get him the ball. And if they don't click, he's not going to play at all. But you like to think that Peyton Manning can find a way to integrate him in there.
All right, so we're going to start off with talking about some of these guys. Now, already talked about Napster, man, daily fantasy professional. Lots of huge scores, lots of big wins. This guy is absolutely phenomenal. Fantasy Nomad works over at the fantasyalarm.com. Fantasyalarm.com, actually. There's no "the" in it. Former colleague of mine, actually. Great guy. I've done a few on-air shows with him before. Really cool dude. Glad he could participate. So if you get an opportunity, check out fantasyalarm.com and see what they have to offer. I absolutely love some of the tweets they put out, too. Very informative, straight to the issue. Make sure you have the information you need to stay on top of your game. Josh Shepardson, of course, our very own here at Fantasy Sports Live. He's our Major League Baseball writer. Puts out picks to quick Monday through Friday, which, frankly, to me, is just about one of the top articles you could be reading each day. Puts in so much work, so much effort. And I'm bragging for him because he's such a humble guy. I know he wouldn't brag for himself. So really cool dude, and glad he could be a part of this draft as well.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more comprehensive articles you're going to read. I read it every day, obviously, write about it for the update, and he's just money. And not only does he tell you who to play, but he definitely brings into play why you should be using these guys. So I love that about it.
FT411, don't let the screen name fool you. He is Project Roto now. Used to go by Fantasy Trade 411. ProjectRoto.com. Really cool package that you can purchase there. Daily fantasy cheat sheets. They help you out with your team in many different comprehensive ways. And somebody I am very proud to call a friend now for over a year. Really cool dude. Glad I've gotten a chance to get to know him. And I definitely think he is one of the cooler Twitter follows as well. Just tweets to critical mass. That's when you're looking for entertainment, sometimes you want to throw on television, you want to watch something at night. Nick Ride-A-Canoe. Yeah, that's why I have to call him Ride-A-Canoe. Nick Ride-A-Canoe, great guy to follow on Twitter, just entertaining and constantly keeps the timeline full. Between him and someone we'll talk about in just a minute, Friddle, you can basically have a television show on your Twitter timeline and never have to get up and turn the TV on.
Absolutely. I see my boy Marvin Jones going off in the eighth round there.
Yeah, Marvin Jones.
And then Jordan Cameron, 8th round. I think that's a steal in the 8th round. Definitely. He's got some tremendous upside in that offense, especially if Josh Gordon is not a part of it this year.
Yeah, now he was the next tight end off the board after Vernon Davis. It just took quite a bit longer than I think you or I were expecting. I actually think there are a couple players I see in a few of these earlier rounds. I'm actually going to say something right now that's probably pretty controversial, but everybody after Rashad Jennings, I would have taken Jordan Cameron before them.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jordan Cameron this year.
Yeah.
And as someone who's watches that division religiously, Jordan Cameron is a specimen.
He is.
He's terrifying.
Anyone with that sort of pass-catching ability in the red zone, the ability to go up and grab it, just has innumerable value. So.
Oh, yeah. There's a nice late pick there. Nick Foles in the 9th round. He's looking definitely solid. I know he's a guy that you're a huge fan of this year.
Yeah. Absolutely a huge fan of him. All right, next guy I want to highlight here, James Todd. Somebody that's a really cool dude over at RotoViz, great writer. New to me, somebody I've met recently, but ended up just as a really cool Twitter follow. At Spider2Banana, but it's spelled a little weird, so maybe he could drop that in the chat. I don't want to leave you guys trying to guess it for yourself. And he loves RotoViz's NFL apps. Loves using those. For those of you who don't know, RotoViz, if you type that into your search on Google Play, the iPhone, iTunes, App Store, any of those places, you can check out some of those. He also loves Sportable, all the content there, and he's a big MFL 10 fan, along with being a sort of beer aficionado, somebody that loves the brews. So I know you're a big brew fan as well, right?
Yeah, and today's IPA day.
Is it?
Yep.
They make a holiday for everything, I'll tell you.
Oh, and an IPA deserves at least one holiday as being the best type of beer on earth in my mind.
All right. Let's go down the board here, and let's talk a little bit about Mr. Brandon Niles, writer at 4for4.com. He's a fantasy writer and a scout, so it would actually be pretty cool if he would elaborate a little more on what the scouting job he does over there. That sounds exciting. I've always thought scouts would have a pretty cool life, you know, get on the road, early morning cup of coffee, traveling to a couple of games, scoping out players. I always thought that'd be kind of a cool job for a little while.
Yeah,
almost like a trucker with a purpose. You know, instead of hauling loads, you're going off back and forth from game to game across the country.
Yeah, you just get to observe all the new talent and then critique. That sounds like definitely that would be a blast.
He says he is also available at the Discuss Your Team board for draft and team questions at 4for4.com. So if you ever have a question about your season-long team, seems like a pretty solid place to go. The Discuss Your Team board for draft and team questions. Next up, we've got let's do Matt Riddle here. I talked about him when I was talking about Nick, Project Roto. Matt Riddle works at Project Roto. He's a writer there, also with 4for4.com. And this guy, let me tell you, his MFL 10 obsession rivals a drug addict. It's absolutely phenomenal how much this guy loves MFL 10s. I've never seen someone so enthusiastic about a certain kind of draft, which is great, because I feel like he's one of the folks who has really ushered in a knowledge and understanding of MFL 10s. And to be quite frank, this is what this sort of best ball draft right here is modeled after, is the concept of an MFL 10. If you have any more questions about that, I won't even do it justice if I try to explain it. Please go to him, ask him to link you to some of his articles. He's written quite a few about them. And in fact, I just participated in a free, on-the-house compensated MFL 10 that I will be actually answering some questions for, and he's going to be writing up what all of us players thought about our first experience with an MFL 10.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool, and make sure you follow him on Twitter at FFRiddle, and you can check that out when it's available. Next up, we got Mr. Dave Loughran. Dave Loughran, a senior writer at FantasyInsiders.com, a superb place to get daily fantasy information. They've got great MLB articles that come out every day. They've also got a premium subscription that you can order, and they've got a little tool called Batman from Derek Carty. I'm not sure if you've heard the word on the street, but this thing is the newest innovation in daily fantasy projection models. It is an absolute steal for the return on investment that it actually gives back, and from all the people I've heard who have purchased it so far, it is well worth the investment. Dave also likes to podcast from time to time, so if you follow him at Laffy_D on Twitter, you might have a couple of hearables. You like that, hearables? Show up in your timeline for you to consume throughout the day. I certainly love. I actually have done a podcast with him in the past. Great guy, extremely knowledgeable, and it looks like we had a kicker off the board here in the kicker off the board here in the 10th round. Adam Vinatieri.
Yeah, definitely. You know they're going to be scoring some points there in Indianapolis with.
I was just trolling you to see if you would actually give some analysis on the kicker off the board. Very clearly a misclick, but that's okay. Look, we forgive you. You get one of those per draft. Hell, I get one or two of them per day anyways. So, Kenny Stills, an interesting pick. A lot of people love the boom bust playability there from Stills, and I didn't expect him to go this early, but there's a very real chance somebody knows something we don't hear.
Yeah, he's a guy with some good upside, but you never really know what you're going to get out of him week in and week out. So one of those guys I'm really interested to see what he gets going on this year.
Ryan Hodge over at ProjectRoto.com. He is at RoboHobo on Twitter. He is the Roto Hobo here in our draft, and he is one of by far the most helpful people on Twitter. I recommend everybody following him simply because the number of questions he answers is phenomenal. If anybody has a question about their fantasy football, baseball, basketball, any kind of team, go to him at RotoHobo, and you will get a timely and very accurate, thoughtful reply. Somebody that I have known for quite some time now as well. Really cool dude. Recommend you stop by his timeline and start up a conversation. Also check out, again, ProjectRoto.com. Last couple of guys here to give you a little insight on. Mike Gallagher, writer from Roto World. A good buddy of mine that I've made over the past year. Somebody who shares my love for daily fantasy basketball and just basketball in general. Did some podcasts with him about NBA Summer League. Those were really fun. And he is also an authority on NFL. I think a lot of people overlook that fact due to how talented he is handling the NBA. I would certainly make sure you give him a follow on Twitter at Mike S. Gallagher, and make sure you head over to Roto World on a regular basis to check out the content he puts out. I believe he ranked an astounding number of players for the upcoming fantasy football season. It would definitely pay dividends before your season-long drafts if you go over and check those out before you select your players for your team.
Seeing some defenses coming off the board here. We had 3 in a row.
Yeah, looks like Panthers defense, Seahawks defense, and what was the other one? The Chiefs defense. Yeah, the Chiefs defense came off the board. Justin Hunter and Josh Gordon both going off the board. 2 guys that I was waiting to come off the board, actually, and talk about. Hunter is somebody who has picked up steam. A lot of people love this guy. Got the physical tools to be a monster. It just matters whether or not he keeps it all together. And Josh Gordon, we're going to know within a week or two. They're saying 8-game suspension minimum, but in a best ball format, I'll take 8 games of Josh Gordon in the 11th round.
Yeah, and I mean, he can sit on your bench for those first 8 games and then come back and be one of the elite options as far as wide receivers go in the entire NFL. So definitely worth taking a chance on, especially in this format.
Yep. All right. That wraps it up for introducing our experts in the sites for. If you have any more questions about those, all these guys hanging out here in the chat, I'm sure they would love to answer them. And I see some of the guys talking about the Travis Coons pick. So I got to be honest, I don't know who Travis Coons is. All I know is Rob Baronis.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I know about Rob Baronis. I don't know. Is he? I know he's old. Is he gone?
I'm not sure. It's going to be interesting. I think it drafted according to need there and gave him Travis Coons.
I'm gonna have to look that up.
Look it up. We're wasting time on kicker analysis.
Yeah, no Rob Baronis.
Interesting that Jordan Matthews went off the board here. Somebody that a lot of people are extremely high on. He has more numbers accumulated in college than Riley Cooper has in all of his NFL seasons, which speaks to the underwhelming talent that Riley Cooper is. Somebody that I personally am not very high on this year. And I think Jordan Matthews has a solid opportunity to step in to this Philadelphia offense led by Chip Kelly and LaShawn McCoy and really have a big impact year one. A lot of times it's difficult for wide receivers to make a huge impact year one. Cordero Patterson, Tavon Austin. A lot of these guys, it's just difficult for them to break out. But Jordan Matthews has a phenomenal opportunity, a great physical skill set, a great physical toolbox, and the situation with Nick Foles couldn't be better. He's stepping into an offense that wants to throw and wants to make big plays happen.
Yeah, and the fast pace, and they're a very fast-paced offense as well. So, you know, they're going to be running as many, if not more, plays than anyone in the entire league. So definitely plenty of chances there for Matthews tonight.
Hashtag free Gordon coming up. FF Riddle saying, why can't I find Tebow? Yo, Gaby, what's up? You can if you're doing daily fantasy motivational speaking.
Yeah,
I'm
if
sure.
you're on the SEC network, you can find Tim Tebow.
Daily fantasy SEC rewind games. You can definitely. Greg Olsen, a good get. Yeah, solid tight end. Continually underrated. Always seems to be underrated, but just a workhorse.
Yeah.
You know, consistent. If you don't snag one of those top 5 guys, Greg Olsen right there on the outside of the top 5, someone you can count on for consistent production. Going to put up in a best ball PPR format 8 to 12 fantasy points a week. If you can snag a touchdown, maybe you're looking at 15, 16. So.
Yeah, and you've got to love the fact that he's the most reliable option in that Carolina offense and has been for quite some time. So Cam Newton, big fan of Greg Olsen there.
Now, Ladarius Green pick is interesting as well. A lot of people with Antonio Gates. Not the biggest fan of him this year. A lot of people, though, are sort of questioning whether or not he can return to prominence. I think that's another instance of a player resting more on his name recognition and value than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And Ladarius Green had some nice games last year. I know not a huge volume guy last year. Didn't have a ton of catches in many games, but he was definitely a red zone target, which is what you're looking for here.
And Michael Pecan says that Olsen pick was auto. Ugh, I still don't think it's a terrible pick. 9th round seems about right for Greg Olsen.
Yeah.
The lone proven option in that offense. You got Jericho Cotchery. You know, he's, I guess, a proven option, but not really going to be a guy that you trust, right?
No, not a guy that I trust at all.
No. Would you leave your kids with him?
No.
Okay.
Tom Brady in the 12th rounds. If Tom Brady has another Tom Brady year, then that could be an absolute steal there in that 12th round.
And absolutely good. And this is kind of the theme of this year, is the late round QB strategy. People are just bonkers over this. I wonder if in some instances it might be going a little bit to the extreme, just because whenever there's a good thing, people tend to play it out a little too hardcore to the other side. But all in all, I do think the strategy is solid. You don't need a quarterback right away because the top, 7, 8 quarterbacks after you get out of the elite guys, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Peyton Manning, are going to be so close in value on average at the end of the year. There's no reason to take one in the 6th round when you could have just got one of the others at the 13th round. So what that does is it creates like a Mexican standoff, actually, where everybody's just sitting there with their hands on their pistol waiting to draw and fire, but nobody wants to be the first guy to take a shot and take one of these kind of middle range, middle elite tier QBs. So they just keep going back and back and back. Then finally somebody pulls the trigger. Like, I'm trying to look for an example here. It looks like we had 3 straight rounds, the 6th, 7th, and 8th, with no quarterbacks. And then, boom, we exploded with Nick Foles. We had Matt Ryan come off the board, some people extremely high on him. Cam Newton. Then you look a little further, Jay Cutler, Tony Romo, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady. Immediately the quarterbacks start flying off the board because it's basically how long will someone wait to take one. Once somebody takes one, everybody says, "Oh crap! Now I got to get mine, or else all the ones I want are going to dry up." But until that point, nobody wants to draft one.
It's the domino effect.
Yeah.
You see a quarterback go off, and you say, "Oh no, I better get mine now."
So taking a look here in the chat, PPR, better pick Cobb or Nelson? Definitely Nelson for me. Love Nelson. I like Cobb, just not as much as Jordy.
Yep, I agree with that sentiment there.
Dwayne Allen looks healthy, and people seem to forget he was the Colts' best tight end in 2012. I agree with two guys, Brandon. Enough of this Kobe Fleener is his friend nonsense.
They went to school together.
Yeah, it's not analysis, people. All right, they're friends. So what? Let me tell you something. If Justin and I were friends and we did live shows together, and let's say Justin is just not holding up his end of the bargain, or I'm not holding up mine, and a Dwayne Allen type comes along, just a big burly podcast freak. He's got all the physical tools to podcast and live show the crap out of it. You know what? You can't fault either of us for going with that guy instead, right? It's a professional move.
I will say this: Carson Palmer and Troy Polamalu were roommates in college. You see how that worked out? They didn't keep being buddies. No. Palmer kept just throwing the ball to him. Well, so maybe they did end up, I guess, but
they still absolutely loved each other.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Bengals D.
Late QB says Smack Daddy. Romo, RG3, Ben Roethlisberger, or Cutler.
Romo for me.
It's RG3 for me because Romo coming off the back surgery. I just don't trust people coming off back surgery. I need to see a year out of him.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If I knew Romo was healthy, completely healthy, and I'd seen him take a hit, we haven't even seen a preseason game yet with him. If I'd seen him take a hit, I'm happy taking him there.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I'm not taking Romo here. I will be taking RG3 though. I think the upside in a best ball format, and I don't even know if he's talking about best ball, but just the upside in general. I really love what the Redskins offense is going to be capable of this season. Spider2 Banana says, I really like Malcolm Floyd there. Yeah. Malcolm Floyd still has a little bit of upside. He's got that burner speed. If he can get out there, Phillip Rivers is still doing his thing, having kids and throwing touchdown passes. So.
Yeah, you got the little block there of Bengals and ex-Bengals, 4 straight right there.
Over-under this season. Attempts or scows from Phillip Rivers?
Oh, scows, for sure.
Okay, scows. More scows than attempts this season?
I mean, he probably scows multiple times while going through his progressions every time he drops back. You just can't see it. He doesn't have the right camera.
Like, I don't want to speculate too much on somebody's personal life because maybe he's just the best father in the world, and I don't even want to say he's not. But can you imagine if he did that to his kids? Just all the time they come downstairs and knock over a glass of water. He just turns at him and looks at him like one of his offensive linemen.
It doesn't even say a word.
Yeah, it just doesn't say a word.
Gives him a dirty look until they clean it up.
It would be phenomenal. It'd be absolutely amazing. Would also cost a lot of therapy on the insurance's dime later in the year.
Oh yeah.
Friddle just took Jeremy Hill in the 13th. Your boy, Jeremy Hill
could end up being the workhorse in that offense. Yeah. He's a sneaky play that late because he could end up being the guy that gets all the carries, and then Gio is the change of pace kind of guy. So I like Jeremy Hill there.
And Roto Hobo says Laffy screwed up my late round QB strategy. He's took effing 3 of them. Peyton Manning, Russell Wilson, Tony Romo took too many of them off the board. And that creates even more of a scramble to get one of these guys.
4 now, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Hey, well, that's not a bad strategy there. Make sure everybody else can't get them.
Yeah. Take them all off the board. Spider2 Banana says Friddle just took Jeremy Hill, like I said. Jeremy Hill, I think he's going to have a really solid season. I think we inspired everyone with that Phillip Rivers talk. Darren Sproles is somebody that's interesting to me. Out there in Philadelphia, what do you think?
I love Darren Sproles.
Okay.
I love his pass catching ability, his elusiveness. I really even like his size because he's the kind of guy, he gets behind a couple of linemen and you don't even see him until he's already burst past you. So that's what concerns me a little bit with LaShawn McCoy. But that's about it. I love him.
Roto Hobo losing his mind currently over the fact that all of his quarterbacks dried up before he got a chance to take them. telling one of our drafters, you're not supposed to go Phillip Rivers there. You already have Jay Cutler. It's Cullen signal caller from the bench. You know? That's not the way this was supposed to go. Roto Hobo says, I'm on tilt. I'm always supportive of somebody being on tilt. Big fan of being on tilt.
Oh, yeah.
I spend most of my time in a state of tilt, to be completely honest.
I'm constantly walking at a little bit of an angle. Always on tilt.
Always. Let's see. Smack Daddy says PPR tight end Pitta or wait and take Delaney Walker. Also, CJ 2K. Does he get a boost with the Ivory injury? CJ 2K gets 0 boosts from anybody for anything. I think he's pretty much proved that he can be a consistent workhorse back, but not somebody you want to own because he'll be a top 15 guy at the end of the year if he doesn't get injured, but he won't have actually won you any weeks.
Yep, he'll be the guy who is just pretty good every week, but he'll probably have one huge game like he does, but not a guy you can rely on most weeks.
And this really speaks to the zero running back strategy that a lot of people have been employing this season. And like I said, it doesn't mean 0 QBs overall. What it does mean is that you are not investing high picks in running backs due to the fact that guys like Chris Johnson, he may play every week, but he's not going to really help your team. You know, you might as well just take 5 or 6 lottery tickets in the later rounds and just hope that some of them pay off a little later.
Yeah, especially in this format. I mean, it's a different kind of strategy here. So definitely upside picks are the way to go. Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan of Chris Johnson, and I don't think he gets much of a boost at all from Ivory. Too soon for Taj Boyd, says Spider 2 Banana. Short analysis on C.J. Spiller, says Roto Hober, or on Chris Johnson rather. He is trash. There we go. Expert analysis from our expert mock drafter.
Then some even better down there where he says Titans had the best run block according to PFF last year, and he still couldn't run.
Yeah, he had like 3 top 24 weeks last year, and that was it. Yeah, he's a guy that's just not gonna. He'll finish as like a top 15 running back if he stays healthy. But he will not win you any weeks.
Yep.
And that just speaks to the nature of running back durability as well. The fact that if you stay healthy, you're probably going to be in the top 15, 20 overall for the whole season. But on a points per week basis, you're just going to get blown away by other guys.
Yeah, because if you figure it in terms of the 1,000-yard benchmark, which I feel like is low, I don't know the exact number, but it's something like 67 yards a week, which is really not that good. Because if your running back gets you 67 yards, you're not happy. So in order to be a good or elite running back, you're going to be wanting 1,400 yards at least.
Yeah, now I'll tell you what I love right here. I absolutely love, cannot say how much I love enough this pick of Andrew Hawkins. Let me tell you why. You probably know better than just about anybody else what Andrew Hawkins is capable of.
Yep.
He's not a big name. A lot of people haven't seen him actually play.
He will be.
This guy can run. This guy can catch the ball, he can make a move or two, and he can run.
Yep.
And if Josh Gordon ends up being out, right now the reports out of training camp are that Miles Austin is the number 1 option in the passing game. What that really means is Miles Austin is listed as the number 1 wide receiver, and Jordan Cameron is the number 1 option in the passing game. But you got to figure, Gordon out for at least 8 games, maybe the whole year. Miles hamstring. Yeah, look at that Freudian slip.
Perfect.
I even called him Miles hamstring. Yeah, to hell with it. We're calling him Miles hamstring from here on out.
Let's stick with that.
Miles hamstring is going to be out for at least half the season. And who does that leave?
Andrew Hawkins.
Andrew Hawkins is going to step in and be a monster, in my opinion, this year. Even more so if Johnny Manziel gets the start, because Johnny Manziel is the kind of quarterback that can create with his feet when a play dies, and Andrew Hawkins is the kind of guy that can sprint around and make a couple cuts and get open on the run while Johnny Manziel is running. I could easily see them connecting for some long receptions on broken plays where he just dumps it off to a guy like Hawkins who becomes available, and Hawkins does some of the work 20, 30 yards down the field himself.
Oh, yeah, and I know watching him play with the Bengals, Hawkins makes just some absolute ridiculous cuts in the open field. He's one of the better players in the NFL in the open field, honestly. And I think he's going to pay off this year.
Napster man with the CJ 2K MVP, and in parentheses, can I trade him? It was misclick. So, sorry, Nap. Didn't mean to bash on you here, buddy. I like the rest of your draft, man. I like it. Let's see. Friddle takes Corin Robinson. Kyrie Robinson? Yeah. I like it. I think there's a legitimate void to be filled in New Orleans, and as Marcus Colston wides down, as they have to figure out a way to keep Jimmy Graham healthy, right?
They have to.
They cannot keep sending him over the middle of the field for these routes, or his career is going to be over. That's the problem with Gronk. You're not going to expect a guy that's 6'6", 6'7" to slow down. He's going to go full speed. You send him over the middle of the field, and he's going to get chopped right in the knees by somebody, right in the back by somebody. You got to figure out a way to keep Jimmy Graham healthy. Marcus Colston on the decline. Darren Sproles out of town. This is probably the perfect time for the Saints to move more towards a feature back that can just monster, just take that entire workload, put a couple guys on his back, and get 4 yards down the field. And Kyrie Robinson is a solid bet to get that production. So I'm a big fan of Kyrie Robinson this year. Very nicely done, Freddle. Great pick at the back of the draft. Yeah,
definitely. The Saints are not, in my mind, no longer that offense where you just look at them and you try to figure out which wide receiver to take now because they're running
a lot of question marks. Way more question marks than previously. Lance Moore no longer a factor. Used to be a guy you could sort of count on.
He's gone.
Marcus Colston was a top 10 wide receiver for 4 or 5 straight years. Jimmy Graham was fresh, didn't have the mileage on him, so you weren't as worried about an injury. You had other guys out there like Devery Henderson who would always go off for the long balls.
Yeah, he'd get that one catch for 50 yards and a touchdown.
Yep, guys like Devery Henderson. The options just aren't the same. You got unproven guys like Kenny Stills. You got Marcus Colston, who frankly looks like he's running in mud half the time. Jimmy Graham, who's coming off of injuries last year. Like I said, they have to find a way to keep him healthy through the second half of the season into the playoffs, which is potentially where they're hoping. Not potentially, that's where they're hoping to go. I don't know. I just like Kyrie Robinson a lot. Marcus Lee, another interesting guy. Love the Tavon Austin pick. You cannot judge a wide receiver on his rookie season. You just can't. You can judge the upside that you saw in the opportunities he got.
Which is ridiculous.
Right. The upside Tavon Austin got in limited opportunities was absolutely absurd. I'm not saying he's going to be a stud, but as a 16th round flyer, I absolutely love that selection.
I really love Brian Hartline there as the guy you mentioned earlier about Ryan Tannehill, if he's going to be able to turn it around and put together a big season. Hartline, not a huge guy. He's not going to be blowing anybody away, but he's a good possession receiver. He's a guy who's been known to catch a lot of balls, so I like him this year.
Yeah, I like him a lot as well. Looking over these last few rounds, 11th round, somebody we didn't talk about when it happened, but Bernard Pierce. Reports out of Ravens camp right now are not only is Bernard Pierce obviously running with the first team because Ray Rice is going to be gone for 2 games, a lot of reports are saying that Bernard Pierce might hold on to the starting job, and Ray Rice might be the change of pace back.
Yeah, I mean, Ray Rice was just straight up bad last year. I mean, not even just bad for Ray Rice. I don't know the exact number, but I want to say that he had the lowest yards per carry of any qualified back, didn't he?
Yeah.
Or very, very damn near if he didn't. So, yeah, Bernard Pierce, definitely that guy. Definitely big.
Got a hashtag Davis Maddock in here. Can we not get Davis Maddock trending on Twitter, please? I love Davis as much as the next guy, but let's not give him his own hashtag. That's a little too much. Not trying to bloviate this man out of his mind. Yeah, I like that Bernard Pierce pick in the 11th round of a best ball league. If he turns out to be the feature back in that Baltimore offense, Baltimore has historically produced a very strong runner every season, with the exception of last year and Ray Rice, who frankly there had to be something going on.
Yep.
So I like that Bernard Pierce a lot. He could be a 5th, 4th, maybe even 3rd round value at the end of the year if he holds on to that feature back role and puts up great numbers.
Yeah, I mean he's a guy that he's a Marshawn Lynch type of runner where he's going to initiate the contact and just bowl you over. So. Definitely like his chances this year. Not a fan of Ray Rice at all.
I'm a big fan of Martellus Bennett. I don't even care about what he has a role in the offense for. I'm a big fan because he put a young gun in his place.
Yep. Everybody's giving a bunch of hate for that.
I love it.
I don't see the issue.
I love it. Cocky young gun comes out, thinks he owns the world, thinks he can neck tackle somebody in practice.
Yep.
Let's show him what's up.
Now Brian Hoyer needs to do like Johnny Manziel.
Yeah,
that'll be good.
Look, can we get a show of hands here? I would absolutely love it if Johnny Manziel just got blindsided by Brian Hoyer.
Yep. They need to arm wrestle for the starting job.
And here's the thing. It doesn't have to be Brian Hoyer. Just somebody needs to, because that would fracture the relationship, the guy on the sideline holding the clipboard. I'm not an advocate actually anymore. I've just thought of it. Not Brian Hoyer, but somebody, Joe Hayden or somebody, needs to come around on the blind side, and the offensive lineman just needs to just walk past and let it happen.
Yeah.
And just come around, knock his ass to the ground, and then take a selfie with him while he's laying there. That's what needs to happen. Whenever rankings are out of order, the up-and-comers sometimes get forgotten about, e.g. Kyrie in the 16th. Let me tell you a little something here, Matthew. Can I call you that? You're all experts. You should know who it is you're looking for. So I give no free passes here in that regard, my friends. Whoever takes the Zach Ertz in the 17th round, who frankly from the the analysis that's been coming from Philadelphia with some of the word from coaches is that this guy could be their top red zone target this year. Which, again, we talked about it with Jordan Matthews. This guy, I think, has phenomenal upside, just like anybody who's getting talked about as maybe being an option in that offense.
Yeah, he was a guy last year that nice, cheap player, a guy you could pick up on waivers that you pick him up and fill in all the time, and he was always a red zone target.
Spider2Banana says, not going to get sniped on my kicker pick, though.
And then Teddy B, officially the furthest drop from last draft to this one.
Yeah.
All the way down to the 17th.
All the way down to the 17th round. So there we go. Finally, Bridgewater off the board. It was like draft day with Aaron Rodgers or Johnny Manziel. When's he gonna go? I feel so bad for the kid. He was supposed to be number 1 overall in this draft. He's sitting around waiting until the back end of the 17th round. Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Poor guy. And he's just distraught about it.
Niall Davis and Lance Dunbar, 2 exciting backups I've heard a lot about. Jamal Charles starting to get the mileage on him.
Yeah.
And you don't wish that upon anybody, but you do have to plan.
Yeah, I mean, he's been injury prone.
Yeah. Does something, if something should happen to Jamal Charles, Niall Davis steps in that workhorse role.
Yeah, and he filled in nicely last year when he played.
Very nicely.
So it was obviously a little bit of a drop from a Jamal Charles, but not a significant one. So he's definitely a guy that probably, in my mind, the best backup in the league.
Oh, wow. Wow, there's a defense. Experts, unite, discuss. Best backup running back in the league. He says Niall Davis. I don't have a clue because I don't know all the backups off the top of my head. But I'm all for some good. Get ready to embrace debate.
Now I got to look and make sure I didn't miss anybody that's a backup. By the way, Giovanni Bernard does not count as a backup.
Inferno looks at team, removes pants. There we go.
Love it.
Absolutely love it. Taking a look at these other picks, some of these other guys, maybe to talk about here. See if we can scroll up. Looks like we should be able to get that 20th pick down there. People should be able to see it. Devonta Freeman, somebody else that went early last time. It fell really far in this draft. Devonta Freeman, a lot of good words coming out. A lot of the players had a lot of good things to say about Freeman. Basically, he's working his ass off. I think I heard one quote from a beat writer saying he ran like his ass was on fire, which is always a good thing to hear, a guy that really wants it, trying to earn his spot. So I think Freeman is an interesting play there. Again, the injury history with Steven Jackson. Definitely. Does he really have a full season left in the tank? If I had to take the over or the under on full season, I would take the under.
And he
for a
didn't look that
significant
great.
amount of money.
Yeah, he didn't look that great when he was out there anyway.
No.
Steven Jackson. So that job might not be his for very long.
Geno Smith off the board. I actually think he has phenomenal upside this year. I'm a big fan of Geno Smith here. And it looks like James White, New England backup running back, the flavor of the week if you've been following along in fantasy football. Yeah. Guys are in love with this dude. There's always guys that get fallen in love with, the reports out of training camp. This is why we love this game, because it's absolutely absurd and ridiculous that we get excited about reports out of training camp, and it affects draft stock so drastically.
That's the beauty of the game.
Yeah, look at Andre Williams. 2 weeks ago, Andre Williams is going nowhere near as high as he's going now. Now, all of a sudden, Andre Williams is a commodity that people are like, oh, you got to take him before someone else does. He's going to be the starting running back by the end of the year. And people absolutely love him.
Yeah.
So, I think it was a great pick in the 15th round there.
Oh, absolutely.
Devonta Freeman and Andre Williams back-to-back, the perfect example of why the zero running back strategy is effective. You can get guys like that late, and again, it's just all about cashing in lottery tickets.
Yeah. If he ends up being a starter, then, that's beyond a steal right there. That's just gold.
And Spider2Banana, wet his pants. So, sorry, Matt, took your defense. MFL 10 scoring right. Actually, draft day scoring, Mr. Project Roto, but I would assume they're fairly similar. Pretty standard PPR scoring. Roto Hoba says, I'm going to trade Laffy a quarterback. He needs one. Yeah. This is an unfortunate case of auto-selecting. He's got the market cornered on the the best ball quarterback. He will have a top 5 quarterback each week. I will very boldly predict that.
He almost has to.
Yeah. So I will boldly predict he will have some solid quarterback options each week.
Kicker's going off like crazy here in the 19th.
Yeah, that's how it sometimes goes. Unfortunately, I'm not going to give analysis for that because I won't stoop to that level. Not going to analyze kickers. No. I have an interesting question, all of you. Let me ask you how you feel about taking one kicker in best ball formats. Now, I know you have the bye week where you just wouldn't have a kicker playing, but is a kicker that important that you would tie up a 20-man roster? You would tie up one spot with a kicker, a second kicker. I actually, in some of my drafts, I haven't been going with a second kicker. If I really like an upside option that I think has the potential to, have a huge week 2 or 3 weeks out of the year, I'll take that over my 6 fantasy points from my kicker. And just lose those points 1 week.
I absolutely agree with that. There's not a chance that I'm using 2 spots on kickers.
And so I'm asking our experts here what they think about that strategy. It's just something I was thinking about. In the 15th round, Josh McCown and Christine Michael went. 2 really interesting guys. And Maurice Jones-Drew went off the board in the 14th round. I might call that the steal of the draft, actually. He is the front runner right now to be the lead running back in Oakland. I still think he has a little left in the tank. I think that a lot of what we saw last season was a product of a terrible offense in Jacksonville. I think he is worth far more than a 14th round pick, which is, again, why the zero running back strategy is effective. Somebody's going to be there that you can plug and play each week.
Yeah, and who knows if Darren McFadden can even stay healthy at all. So that definitely ups his value even more. Yeah, and
Roto Hobo says, nope, I only take 1. I do take 2 defenses, though, which is solid. Because a defense, you actually have legitimate upside ability.
Yeah.
And not only that, like from week to week, you might take the Seahawks defense, and they might average 10, 15 points a week or whatever, but you might randomly have the Patriots defense, too. And 1 week, they just put up 30 points because they get way ahead and they get a lot of interceptions and fumbles.
Yeah.
So I can see taking a defense because even on weeks where it's not the bye week, you might have your crappy defense outplay your good one just by virtue of having a ton of turnovers on a random week. So you definitely have a lot of upside. With kicker, I just don't see that upside.
Yeah, and plus kickers can't even – they have no control over when they make plays. I mean, they get called on to go in the game, they either make a play or they don't, whereas the defense can make a play on any down. So much more potential for points for sure.
Yeah, and Roto Hobo says kickers are going to average you 4.5. I would rather spend that on Sims in best ball or Sims in Tampa Bay or White in New England, etc., etc. Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I think that is definitely the way to go. You forego the second kicker. You take the hit 1 week where you don't get the fantasy points because of the bye, but the fantasy points you potentially make up from that lottery ticket you might cash in are more than worth the weight in gold.
I see Tyler Eifert going off there really late. Definitely a big upside guy.
Yeah. Go ahead and talk about him. I know you've been waiting.
Tyler Eifert, just an absolute freak. A guy that I remember when the Bengals drafted him was a complete surprise. But, I mean, he's a huge target. He's got great hands. And Jermaine Gresham not exactly getting it done in what was supposed to be the 2 tight end set. So I love that pick in the last round.
Yeah, I like it too. And BChat50 says, let's be honest, Gaby and Justin, kickers aren't even people. So,
well said, Josh.
Very well said. It's like a drummer in a band, not even a real person. You don't actually count.
It's the guy you can't see.
And Spider2Banana says, right, but the guy who gets 50 points might never crack a lineup either. Yeah, and that's why I asked that question. I feel like there's going to be a lot of division and opinion about that idea. Spider2Banana, dart throws all this late, yeah. Is Gaby even people? You'll never know.
Zing.
I am an automatron talking about fantasy football. F. Everett says second kicker adds probably 40-ish points. Then again, so does some third QBs, etc. So tough to say. Yeah, that to me is the last uncharted frontier here of these best ball drafts. So one of you fools needs to write an article about that because somebody, look, I'll tell you one thing. Surprise, surprise. I don't have a lot of analytical analysis when it comes to the actual numbers. I love to consume information, talk about it, but as far as like getting in the spreadsheet, calculating data, not my thing. I know a lot of you guys can do that, though. So one of you guys needs to figure out what the optimal strategy is. Take like the last 5 years worth of data and find out whether the average 20th round pick or 25th round pick or whatever in a best ball draft is worth more than a second kicker. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you very much for being a part of our live NFL mock draft here at DraftDay. We really appreciate it. We're actually going to be doing one of these each week leading up until NFL season. So check back at the beginning of next week. Hopefully we'll have most of our experts booked and filled out, ready to go. And we will, of course, on Twitter let you know about that as soon as we have it ready. Big thank you to all of our experts for partaking in this. Really cool to see where you guys value some of these dudes. See who goes high, see who goes low. Just a great experience. And we will certainly be talking with all of you again soon. Until next time, peace out.